Testing 1 2. Good afternoon to everyone. First, let me offer my apologies for our late start. But with that being said, at this time I will call on Sister Gwyneth Baptiste Stoddard to open us in a word of prayer so we can begin this very important town hall meeting.
Good afternoon. Can we all stand for prayer, please? Let us pray. Dear God and our Heavenly Father, thank you for waking us up this morning and for bringing us here safely to this meeting, dear Lord. Lord, forgive those who trespass against us. Help us to live in peace and harmony. Gracious God, we thank you for each and every one present today and those listening via social media. Lord, you have blessed us with supportive members who speak to the welfare of our people and the unions. Loving Father, we thank you most of all for being here in the midst. I pray that you bless us in this meeting and keep us safe. Lord, make your face shine on us and be gracious to us. I pray that we feel your presence during this meeting and that you be with us wherever we go. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we commence this meeting. Help us to engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of the unions. Give us clarity so we can tackle each part of today's agenda. Reveal the problem areas and show us the best solution that will apply. Lord, I bring to you the members of the head table who worked tirelessly to get the information to disseminate to our members and by extension the nation. I pray for the executive and staff of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Public Service Union, the Teachers Union, and the Public Police Welfare Association. Thank you for what you have done, Lord, and will continue to do for us. As Lord, you promise not to leave us nor forsake us. These and other favors I ask. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you very much, Sister Gwyneth. Chairperson of the Joint Pension Reform Committee, Brother Andrew John. Deputy Chair of the Joint Pension Reform Committee, Brother Pedro Peters. Other committee members, presidents of the Teachers Union, the Public Service Union, and the Police Welfare Association, past executive members of the unions, opposition leader, the Honorable Dr. Godwin Friday, members of the union, online audience, media, good afternoon. It is with great pleasure that I bring to you the opening remarks. Pension reform affects all of us, and as such it is a very serious thing. And thus, because of the serious nature of this issue, a committee was formed. In this meeting, you will hear from the president of the chairperson of the committee, and the deputy chair, Brother Andrew John, and Brother Pedro Peters. As such, please allow me to just graciously remind you of a few ground rules as we go throughout this afternoon's proceedings. Now, because of the nature of the proceeding, we expect it to be an open forum where questions will be asked and comments will be made. However, we are asking if you wish to ask a question, just kindly raise your hand and you will be asked to come to the mic to air your question. We are asking that you keep the questions and our statements short and clear. Questions can be asked and comments will be made after explanation or reading of each recommendation. So your recommendations would be on the screen at the presentation time. So as you go through each recommendation, you can ask questions or make comments. A vote will be taken after each recommendation is read and deliberated on, so feel free to do so. A majority of hands raised, whether physical or online, will indicate whether something is accepted or rejected. Now, for those persons viewing online, we have the live stream, so we will be monitoring the live stream to make sure that your comments are delivered on this podium and your recommendations made. And with that being said, let me turn you over to Brother Andrew John to begin the proceedings with an overview of the Pension Committee. Brother John.
Thank you very much, Sister Charles, Master of Ceremony. Honorable Dr. Godwin Friday, Leader of the Opposition in the Sunny Grenadines. Brother Oswald Robinson, President of the Sunny Grenadines Teachers Union. Brother Elroy Boucher, President of the Public Service Union. And I was looking for Brother Daniel Prescott. I must recognize him as well, an important ex officio member of the committee. Members of the National Executive of both unions were here. We also want to recognize members of the Pension Reform Committee who are present. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome and thank you for your presence here this evening. This is indeed a very, very important meeting. I call it a town hall meeting, but it is an essential event going forward. This town hall meeting sorts of culminate the work, although not fully, but it brings us closer to the end of the work of the Pension Reform Committee. Now I'll give you a little overview, as is my task, to the formation of the committee. Now, the National Insurance Services was set up in 1987, and as we should be aware, we are all aware, it was set up with the prime purpose of providing a pension as well as other benefits for its members, for persons who would have been contributing to the fund. That was the overarching purpose of the NIS when it was set up in 1987. And we have seen over the years a number of changes that has taken place with the functioning of the NIS. And we will highlight some of them as we go along. The members of the general public, the workers of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and pensioners have become very, very concerned. Matter of fact, we have become alarmed at the present status in which the NIS has found itself. And to a lesser extent, I'm not sure if it's to a lesser extent enough, but the public service union, although it is given a little less attention at this time, that also has become a matter of concern. And we must indicate here that attention needs to be paid to the operations of these pensions. Now, when we say attention needs to be paid, we are talking about attention from us, from citizens, from workers, from pensioners. It's very important that you pay close attention to what is taking place with the fund, a fund that over 85% of us would come at some point to depend on solely in our elder years. So we need to be paying closer attention to what is happening. Now I will go to why we are here and why this committee was set up. Now when we started hearing about the need for reform, there were a number of proposals that were being bandied about. And I must say, it is because of the vigilance of the unions, and the unions must come in for high praise for being aware of what is about to take place and what is actually taking place. The unions picked up on some of it's almost every budget, every year, there has always been some talk of reform. But lately, we have heard that this need for reform has become so urgent that if it does not happen, we are likely to see a complete depletion. I'm not going to go into details because I know that will be our next focus. I'm not going to go into all of those details. I'm just giving you what we would have become aware of. And so the unions commissioned a committee. It's not the first time that the unions have commissioned a committee. But this committee, the difference with this committee, I think what made this committee more effective was the mandate that was given to this committee. And I would read the terms of reference that was given to this committee. And then I will tell you the composition of the committee in a little minute. Now, when this committee was formed, it was tasked to investigate the present financial status of the National Insurance Services and that of the Public Service Pension. So those two things, those two organizations, those two entities, if I may call them that, they were to be assessed, investigated, and we were to give an update on what the status is in terms of finance. Secondly, to evaluate the options for reform proposed by the government for the NIS and the Public Service Union. So we had to do an evaluation, we had to do an assessment of those proposals. And we'll show you where some of the proposals came from in a minute. We also had to assess the impact of any or all changes on pensioners. What impact? We had to do an assessment of the impact that these proposed changes, these proposed reforms would have on pensioners, especially bearing in mind the economic climate that we are in right now. We had to determine the actions needed by workers. I was going to say by the union, but the unions are workers. So the actions needed to mitigate the impact of the reforms on our workers and our pensioners. You notice I keep saying workers because we are workers today, we're pensioners tomorrow. So you can't wait until you become a pensioner to become concerned or to become involved. And most importantly, to provide information and to some extent education, because some persons have already become familiar, have already started educating themselves in relation to what is going on. So our job is to push that a little further to the public and to workers and to pensioners in relation to the proposals that are put forward. Now these proposals, I think my fellow speaker would bring those proposals to you in a little while. Am I correct? Right. So I'm not going to go into them right now. I'm just going to go back to the committee. Now, this broad-based committee was formed with the insight of the leadership of these three organizations, the Teachers Union, the Public Service Union, and the Police Welfare Association. I think a little bit later on, the Nurses Association has expressed some interest in joining. And then if given an opportunity, all other organizations, all other unions rightfully should be involved because all workers would be impacted based on the proposals that are being put forward. So all of us need to be involved as well as members of the general public. Now, when this committee was formed, this committee started its work in April, and I think it was around that time when the Minister of Finance, I think they were commissioning the new complex where the Parliament building is now. He released what we refer to as a ministerial statement on the need for reform, and some of the proposals were put forward. Now, she stated that these proposals were recommendations from the 11th actuarial review. A review which was not made public, which we could not see, right? We have not seen that, at that time when the committee started its work, the information was not available to us. We were getting second-hand information. So we started working blindly, basically. And we decided that we needed to have these documents in our possession so that we could do our own assessment, our own review on what the actuary had to say. So we actually wrote to the Minister of Finance. We wrote to the Director of the NIS asking for these documents. As a matter of fact, some of us would have made trips, visits to these organizations, these institutions, to find out how can we get a hold of the 11th actuarial review, which at that time had already come out and was being used. As a matter of fact, from that same ministerial statement, the Minister of Finance was saying that there was a ramp report which the World Bank had issued on the same review. So they were having access to this review, but I don't know if we were too small at the time to have access to it. We were not given that opportunity, right? So we took to the airwaves, which is always the best option in some cases, and we started expressing these stumbling blocks which we were facing. We were not being given the actuarial review. We were not being given the financial statement beyond 2019. Couldn't get our hands on anything. So how were we supposed to make an assessment to meet the terms of reference that was set for us if we could not get a hold of these documents? And so we started making some noise, and eventually we had a radio program, if I may just say a minute. We had a radio program I think it was on PSU Speak. We had one on SVGTU on Sunday night, and we had one on PSU Speak on Monday night. And we were talking about the need for these reports. And we were saying if we cannot get the facts, we would speak what we hear. We would speak rumors, right? And that Monday when I was at work, on Wednesday, I saw one of the vehicles from the NIS. And I was surprised to see that they had brought a copy of the 11th actuarial review. So that came to fruition, and I must say, it really made a big difference in the work, the way the committee was able to continue its work, in the findings, because what they were giving us, we realized in the ministerial statement, was selected bits and pieces of information. The meat of the matter was really in the document. And so we were able to get information from it, which I know my brother would gladly let you have some of, right? And by now we would have publicized that thing so much. I think by now everybody who needs a copy should be able to look, to read for themselves, or his or herself. You should be able to read through what the persons, the independent actuary had to say about the fund. Not only that, we also studied a number of documents in terms of the composition, what the composition of the board should be. From the ILO, we studied some of those budget statements which would have taken place in terms of seeing how the fund managed to reach where it is today. You know, when you're talking about the financial health of the NIS, you had to go back a few years and read through how the funds were being used to get a better idea of where we are today. As a matter of fact, when we look at some of the things that were set up from the NIS, and I listened to the independent speech And when I hear the Prime Minister said that he was lowering the student loan by half, was cutting it down to 4.5%. I was saying it's a very good move for our youngsters, but how is that going to affect the NIS, seeing that the money is belonging to the N? If you are saying to us that there is a need, an urgent need for reform because the financial situation is in trouble, the financial situation is not a healthy one, then how could you be taking money out of? I wonder if you understand where I'm coming from. So we have to look at where they are going and what. It seems as though there is little regard for the health and stability of the fund. And if we go back, as I said earlier, if you review some of the budget speeches taken from a couple of years, you would see that, you would see that the funds, the use of the funds may have led us. Well, that would have come from our proposals, some of our proposals. I don't want to get too involved here this evening, because really and truly, it's something that when you really check it, you become very passionate. You understand? Because when you see what is happening and the need, because we must understand, the NIS needs to continue. You can't get rid of the NIS. I said earlier, over 85% of us would come at one point, if not now, to depend on it. Similarly, the government pension is an essential part of our, continuous development. If you are leaving now from the public service, when you consider that they may actually put back the NIS to age 90 over time, right? It's only the government pension you might be able to get. So we have to really pay close attention to what we're saying. And let me try and wrap up here so that we could go into what Brother Kijo had to say. Right, so I'm actually, I think I would have covered most of what my duty here as the person giving the overview. Not the chairman. I think I would have given you a reason why we are here. And today, I want you to realize that this town hall meeting is really yours. It's for you to add to the discussion, to add to the proposals that we are going to put forward. We are at the stage now where we have been getting a lot of proposals, it's time for us to give and stop letting them give us and us, because we are the ones who are feeling it all the time. So I would stay here, and I really would like to appreciate the work of the committee, the members of the committee, and the ex officio members, Brother Boucher, Robbie, and Mr. Prescott, and we would continue the work up to the end. So I'm leaving now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother John, for giving us that overview of how the pension committee was created. At this time, considering that Brother John almost let a lot out of the bag and then tried to steal Brother Kijo's thunder, at this time, I'll call Brother Kijo to the podium, and he would discuss with us the findings and the proposals. So remember, at any point in time, you are free to ask questions. Just indicate as such, and after he would have made his points. Brother Kijo. Come on, give Brother Kijo a hand.
Well, protocol was already established by Sister Fiona and Brother John, but I want to give a hearty welcome to everyone, the 1,500 people I'm seeing here. Good afternoon to those who are viewing online. And the fact that we are here, it means that we are concerned and we have an interest with the NIS and its parametric, the parametric reform. Brother John was just starting to catch fire. And you know what they say with the old fire stick? When it starts to catch, it's hard to out. But I understand and I share his passion. And it's a very serious issue. And, the presentation will hopefully shed some light on that. If we were following the unions and also the NIS consultation sessions, we would realize, we would have an idea, we would recognize some things in the PowerPoint. They would be familiar to us, and there would be some new things also. So we'll go, and just before we go into it, the major elements of the presentation will deal with all the actuarial recommendations in the report. Now, we have only been hearing some. We believe in transparency. We want to mention all. And also, we want to put forward what we think are sound recommendations, bring the information to you, get your feedback, your dialogue, because we want to submit it to the policymakers as one. So we're not doing it without your consent, without your feedback. We believe in consultation, and that is something that is very important. So we'll go straight into the PowerPoint presentation. I have another mic just in case I get heated like Brother John. Sometimes I like to shift, so I have a portable mic. So we'll begin. The first slide. Okay, so it seems like we're having a little technical difficulty. Let me just run there and see. All right. So the first slide, we're talking about the National Insurance Fund. Now, the National Insurance Act tells us that there's a fund. When our contributions are taken out of our salaries, it is paid into this fund. Also, when investments are made, the interest on that investment goes into the fund to increase the monies that are in the fund. And also, we have monies that are recovered under any act as fines, penalties, or costs. Maybe somebody is not compliant with the National Insurance Act. You are fined. That money goes into the fund to build the fund. So we just want to start a foundation. So on to the next slide, please. Now, as monies go into the fund, monies also come out of the fund. And the Act specifies or stipulates exactly what are the things the monies should be used for. So the benefits, the sickness benefit, maternity, invalidity, you name it, the Act has it there. And obviously the one that is of I would say, great concern to us, the pension, those monies in the fund are to be used for that. Also, we have refunds of contributions. Maybe you might have paid more than you're supposed to. The money it is refunded to you from the National Insurance Fund. Administrative expenses, the NIS building that we see there, to run the NIS, the operations and so forth, the salaries that are paid, comes out of the National Insurance Fund. And any sum that the board may write off as a loss with the approval of the minister. So something like this might be the NIS invest in the National Student Loan. There are reports that about 20% of the loan is not repaid. So that is a sum that could be written off. Whether or not the money should be used for that, I leave it up to you. But that is something that could be considered a loss that would be written off. Next slide, please. Now, the board, National Insurance Board. What is their duty? They are responsible for managing the National Insurance Fund. Responsible for considering and advising on matters referred to them by the Minister of Finance, and also delivering reports on its activities in the previous year, no later than the 30th of June of the following year. Now, if you look on the NIS website, the last report that we see that is available to the public is the 2021 annual report. The 2022 annual report is supposed to be delivered to the Minister no later than June 30th this year. We can't tell you if it was delivered. And once it is received by the Minister, it is supposed to promptly be brought to the House to be passed so that it can be publicly available and accessible to us. As far as we are aware, no such thing has been done. So we are still waiting patiently. Now, the composition of the board. We will go on to the next slide. Right. The composition of the board. 9 members make up the board, National Insurance Board. Remember, they are responsible for managing the National Insurance Fund. So we have 2 members who shall represent, both will be a government representative, 2 will be employees representative, 2 will be employed persons or employees representative, 2 persons who have the relevant business, administration, finance, accounting, or banking expertise. And then we also have 1 the director, or in the director's absence, the deputy director. Now, every time you're preparing for the presentation, there's certain things that just make me continuously smile. This one is one of those things. The members of the board represented employed persons or employees shall be appointed after consultation with trade unions. Well, somebody like they smiling also. I think they know where I'm going with this. Or association of trade unions as appears to the minister to be representatives of employees throughout SVG. Now, when we want somebody to represent us, we want somebody who you hear, who you see, who you know historically, presently are fighting on your behalf or looking out for your concerns. Am I right? You might say I'm biased, but from what I have seen and heard, the Public Service Union and the Teachers Union are two such trade unions and institutions who we know, who we hear, who we see, who we know continuously fight on behalf of their members. But they were never consulted, and I believe leaders for both the PSU and the Teachers Union here, as far as we are aware, they were never consulted. No consultation took place with these two unions as it relates to the persons who are represented employees. So then you ask the question, if they were not consulted, who was? How do we have two individuals representing employees, but these two stalwarts of the unions were never consulted? That is a question I will leave with you. I don't have the answer, but I think I have the answer, but I leave that with you. So that is something that we will see from our recommendation we believe needs to be changed. Go on to the next. The National Insurance Board, the members of the board with the exception of the director or deputy director shall hold office for a period not exceeding 3 years as cabinet may direct. So we have a tenure 3 years in max, and they probably when your time is up, they may decide if they're going to reappoint you, etc. Next slide, please. National Insurance Investment Committee. Now, before I touch this, I'm going to try to draw an analogy. I have 3 courses up here. So, 3 of us represent the board. We have the president and we have the chairman of the board. I am just a board member. Now, these two could make a quorum. So say for some reason not there, these two could make a past decision. They don't need me there. Now, the investment committee is made up, remember we are board members, the investment committee is made up of these two. And they make recommendations to the board. So these two are making recommendations to us 3. Does that sound? Let's ask my question. Does that sound normal? Does it sound like a conflict of interest? Yes. Okay, as I said, let's just repeat it. We have the board, we are the board members. I am the chairman, I am the director, I am just a board member. We make up the board. Right? They don't need me and the board to make a decision. If I am sick, a quorum is 2, and the majority decision follows. These two sit on the investment committee. The committee makes recommendations to the board. So these two are essentially making recommendations to themselves. Now, I am not sure, maybe I'm a bit too young, right? But something sounds a bit off there. And the National Insurance Investment Committee, this is who it consists of. Remember, we have 9 board members. So also there is a committee. The committee shall consist of the chairman of the board. Nice something about the director on the board. Nice something about and 3 other board members. The whole committee is comprised of 5 members from the board. So essentially you have the majority of the board sitting on the committee. So you have the 2 big boys, the chairman and the director, and 3 other persons on the board. We will see the actuary actually recognize that something was wrong with the composition of this committee. And we will touch a bit on that. Next slide, please. And we see that this is the job of the committee, the investment committee. They shall consider and make recommendations to the board on the investment of monies in the National Insurance Fund, which are surplus to current needs. So, for example, the National Insurance Fund might say, okay, we do a projection, and these 2 years we might need about $150 million, just for example, to meet our needs, our expenses. So the remaining 250, we could invest that. So that is the surplus to the current needs. So basically, the board is making recommendations. The committee is making, well, is the board making recommendations to the board. And if you make a recommendation, are you going to reject that recommendation? Quite naturally. So there is a lack of accountability, a lack of independence, and clearly there is an appearance or conflict of interest. And we, as I said, the actuary recognized this and made some recommendations to address this. And just believe that there, and it is amazing, and this is why I said the union believes in transparency, committee. This was never a recommendation we heard apart from the unions and the committee bringing it to light. And that recommendation to change the composition of the investment committee was listed as a high priority by the actuary. But for some reason that was missing in the ministerial statement. Maybe a typo. Most things happen. Now, why is reform necessary at this time? Why the urgency? Reform is necessary now, and it was necessary before. It was urgent, it is urgent now, and it was urgent before. If you have a sore foot, you don't treat it over time, what is going to happen? It's going to get worse. We hear stories, sometimes people take too long to, you have a bad foot, it takes too long to go to the hospital, it has to be amputated, it takes too long to address it. Reform is something that should have happened before. And the longer we take or we wait, obviously it's going to get worse. I liken it also, I always say, it's like you have a roof and there's a hole in the roof, it's dripping. The galvanizer is rotting, the wood is rotting also, the galvanizer is rusting. And you decide, boy, I'm not going to change this right now. But what is going to happen 5 years after if you leave it as it is? Is it going to get better? No, and it's going to take stricter or more drastic or draconian measures to remedy it. So that is where we're heading. And we're here because we've seen from the 10th and 11th actuarial review that the funds are going to be finished roughly. There's an estimate 2033 to 2036. The best estimate is 2034. That's a doomsday for some people. The funds are, if no changes are made, if everything remains as it is, the funds will be depleted by 2034. And obviously that is a cause for concern. And Brother John mentioned it, the NAS has to survive. About 80 to 85% of the pensioners, people who are currently receiving pension from the NAS is the only source of income. So it is something that is very important. We also have expenses are outpacing contributions, as we say, dance can't pay for the light. But I don't go to dances, so I would say the cruise ride can't pay for the fuel, right? And we know the cost of fuel right about now. So, as we see, the fund is not financially sustainable over the medium and long term. And the current benefits provision, contribution, and expenses. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And if we look at the actual review and we've been following the unions and so forth, this might be a chart that you may be familiar with. A projection was made. As you can see, our fund somewhere here, and it's just a dip downwards. If no changes, if everything remains as is. And let's just say it finishes. We make no changes, then the options are: one, by law, the DNS cannot meet its expenses. The government has to cover it. And then two, we will have to pay, but right now it's 10%, 4.5% employee, 5.5% employer, 10% overall. We're looking at an increase of about 18 to 22%. So it's going to be about 2 times what we pay now, we will have to pay. If nothing is done and the funds are depleted. Next slide, please. Now, what are some of the factors that is contributing to this reduction in the fund? Pension. It's plain and simple. The was an increase in the number of pensioners, and as we can see there, from 9,298 to about 9,812, according to the NIS 2021 report. According to the director, he was on a table talk with Theresa Daniel, and he said in February of this year that currently, approximately, we have about 9,300 pensioners with the NIS. Next slide, please. So, let's look at some figures. So we have figures here from 2017 to 2021, because the 11th actuarial review covered the period 2017 to 2019. So from 2017, we have the number of pensioners, and as we can see, if we look at, in 2017 we had 7,720 pensioners. When we come to 2021, we have almost a little more than 2,000 pensioners were added. From what we have seen, a lot of people took early retirement, especially on the COVID period. So, the numbers increased, quicker and faster than was expected or anticipated. Now, we look at the amount of monies that were expended for the pensioners. We started off at 44.6 million in 2017. 2021, it's almost $20 million more. Clearly, pensions need expense, there's a clear increase. And when we look at the contributions, we see that the expenses are creeping up. They're getting close. So clearly, anybody who's doing a budget, once your expenses start to reach close to your income, something has to change. So the increasing cost of the pension is one of the reasons why the fund is depleted. Let's go on and see what else is contributed. Social spending. This is the donations community education projects. This is the data we have from 2015, so the figures for this will be more. But these are the actual figures that we could have gotten with the information. So the figures are higher than what we have here, because we are from 2014, go backwards. We have about $6 million that were spent by the NS, where there were no financial returns on that. So the monies were spent and that's it. So that money came out of the fund for whatever they classify as donations, community and education projects. Now, I want to make clear, and you've already, union leaders say that the committee shares the same sentiment. We have no issue with social programs. Absolutely no issue. What we have an issue with is using the rent money to buy probably a new dress. Using the rent money to buy something that is to go on vacation. The NAS monies, the Act stipulates what it is to be used for, and anytime we take monies out of that fund, where there is no financial return on that, that money is just coming out of the fund and is not adding to the National Insurance Fund. Clearly, that is a problem. So, social programs are good, but the NAS monies are not to be used for that. The monies are to be utilized to continue to build the fund. So, the depletion date may not have been 2034, it could have been 2040. Or, the increase, we might have to increase the contribution rate. The increase might not have been 15% as what is projected or what is put forward. It might have been 12 or 13%. So that is something that we want to keep in mind. Next slide, please. You look at some other investments. Construction of a daycare recreational center, $500,000. You have the construction of the hotel at Diamond. It was a $15 million in loans. I think it was a 10-year loan at 6.5%, and they don't pay in the first year. Some people feel it's a very generous loan agreement. Some people said it's reasonable. We let people decide that. $3.5 million was given in land. We have the second Cape student bursaries. The $500 that were given to students come from the NIS. A lot of people didn't know that, but we couldn't even get the total amount. But that would have been that in millions. So these monies are coming out of the NIS and nothing is going back here. Land development at Peter's Hope, that is a joint project between GECO and NIS. Non-contributory pensions, the figure that we have here is just from 2015 to 2021. 10 million sum were given to persons who do not contribute to the NIS. And this is a very conservative figure, but as I said, we only have the data from 2015 to 2021. Other reports that we have it as high as 55 million, because remember, between 2015 to 2021, we have the 10 million. So we're looking at non-contributory pensions from 10 to 55 million. That's a lot of money to pull out of a fund. Imagine having those monies in the fund to be reinvested. Our doom's date might have been, let's say, 24. But the money is gone, and it doesn't seem to be any way of getting it back. Joint purchase of the city scan, that's a venture between the NIS and the bank. And then we have retirement homes of 750,000. As mentioned, social programs are good, but that is not what the NIS was designed for. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. Monies are set aside for a particular purpose. Let us use it for that purpose. Maybe another ministry or something else could be created to fund these social programs. But not the NIS money. Because when the fund is depleted, who is going to have to cover it? We are going to have to cover it. Right. Now, I remember, we'll just go back one, please. I remember having a discussion with somebody intimately involved with the actuarial review. And we were discussing about half of these investments. And what they told me, they said the investments that we spoke of, the NIS money should not have been used for that. And I will repeat it again. I spoke to someone intimately involved with the actuarial review. I asked about half of these investments, and they indicated that the monies or the NIS money should not have been used for these. Let's go on to the next. Now, this is from the actuarial report, the 10th. Investment should be managed in a prudent manner, focusing primarily on long-term safety and stability, targeting targeting zero rates of return. That's what the preacher normally would do. They would say something like that just to say you're paying attention. Targeting, right, I'm glad you're paying, targeting moderate rates of return as opposed to higher returns for retail investments. When we listen to the actuary, he always stresses a financial return on investment. He didn't say zero rates of return. We need a moderate rate of return because you have to build the fund. It's very important. There are other things to it, but we'll just continue. While supporting local public sector initiatives may allow those entities to better finance their desired programs, the NIS should be cautious. Notice that he said they should be cautious about further participation in such projects, as NIS liquidity needs in the next 2 decades may not be consistent with the other entity cash flow positions. Public sector initiatives, those entities that want to invest in it, they have their objective, their goal, and it may not align with that of the NIS. That is why it is important that there is a strong and independent investment committee to say, listen, we don't think we should engage in this particular investment. Now, can they invest in public sector initiatives? Of course. But, obviously at the right time and at the right rates, because that is very important. And in the actual review, they have some limits. They said, what was it on? The prudential benchmark of 20%. The government or the SPG public sector is supposed to have that sort of exposure. So in other words, your resource might be 500 million. You're allowed to invest maybe in the public sector or 20% of that. But the actuary said this looked like 50%, not 20%. If we take out the Bank of SPG,
it's 30-something%. It is still higher than the 20% benchmark and limit. Now, what you will hear is, well, 50% in other parts of the region, it is 60-something%. Are we going to use the shortcomings of another country to justify our shortcomings? Or should we seek to improve on our current shortcomings? And that is something that we have to be very mindful of. And they say, and the actuaries say, be mindful of investing in public sector initiatives because their objectives may not be in line with your objectives. Next slide, please. Another thing that contributes to unemployment. The economy, a growing economy, generally equates to more jobs, less unemployment, higher wages. All of these things would make the NIS smile because you have more people contributing. Obviously, 2020, COVID hit, and the unemployment rate got even higher. Unemployment became a real thing. So you may have been working 7 days a week, it's got to work 3 days a week. So these things affected the contributions that were coming into the NIS. So if it grew, it didn't grow at the rate that was expected, or it just fell. So the unemployment also played a part. Now, administrative expense, we'll talk a little bit about that after. That is also something that the actuary warned about, the administrative expenses for the NAS, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, we have the 11 actuarial review recommendations. And these are what are listed as high priority. So we go straight into them. So we know we've heard that increase to 15%, but we didn't hear exactly how they're going to do it. The actuary actually recommended, he said, a 1% increase in the contribution rate each year. So right now it's 10%, 4.5% employee, 5.5% employer. He said a 1% increase in contribution rate each year starting in 2022. Now remember the report was finished in 2021, the actual review. So he was looking forward to the next year. So he was saying, listen, increase the contribution rate 1% to at least 15%. So he's saying we're moving from 10 to 15%, right? Or he said, make it a 0.5% increase. So he gave us two options, a 1% increase or a 0.5% increase. And last one, he said, prepare 2 new policies, the benefits policy and the funding policy. The benefits, the maternity, the grant, etc. What are the benefits you're going to provide? How are you going to finance them? What proportion of the contributions are you going to allocate to maternity, to pension? Is it 5% of the contributions? Is it 0.5% to maternity, etc.? And update the existing investment policy and enterprise risk management policy. So those are some of the things that he was recommended. Reduce the maximum age or invalidity pension percentage rate from 60 to 55% before 55 is attainable under the current schedule of accrual rates. Now, replacement rates, accrual rates, all that simply is it's a percentage. The more you contribute, you get a particular percentage. It ranges from 30% to a maximum of 60% depending on how much you contribute. So it would be, let's say for example, your salary is, let's say 3,000. That's the figure they're going to use. They say, listen, say you reach 60%, that's the current max. They say we want to reduce what you're going to get from 60 to 55%. So that is one of the proposals by the actuary. Do we understand that? Just want to make sure we're free to say no. Alright? Next one, do not award, go back please. Do not award all the age pensions to insureds who have not substantially retired. So what they say is, your early age, you can take your pension at age 60, you take it early. What they say is, listen, we don't want to give you your pension. But this is what they're saying. If you make, say you retire, you get your pension early age. If you are working and making $2,166.50, well, we're not giving you your early age pension. You have to be making less than that in order for us to give you your early age pension. As it is now, there's nothing stopping you. You could be making 10,000, you reach the age of 60, you're entitled to apply and get your early age pension. They say, listen, we want to put a stop to that. If you're making anything $2,166.50, and you're not going to get your early age pension. I simply say there's a loophole for everything. I would simply say, well, employer, just take off the 50 cents and just give me $2,166, and they fall under the threshold, right? But I'm just joking there. But that is one of the proposals. Accelerate the increase in pensionable age so that age 65 is reached in 2026 instead of 2028. And we go on to the next slide. So we know in 2014 we had some reforms, and the pension age moved from, over a 15-year period, it will move from 60 to 65. So persons like myself, born 1964 and after, our normal pension age will be 65. That is how it is right now. As it is currently, the pension age is 63. So by wanting to bring this up, they want to say, we don't want to wait until 2028 for the age to be 65. They want to bring it up to 2026. Who is it going to impact? It's not going to impact me, but it's going to impact persons who fall within, who would retire within January 2026 to December 2027. So anybody who wants, early retirement, or want to apply for the early pension early, or you're 64 within that particular period, from 26 to 27, it is going to affect you. Either of two ways. One, you're going to have to pay an additional 6% or lose an additional 6% of what you would be owing. Because every year you take your pension early, you lose 6%. Right? I am pretty sure we are aware of that. Or if you don't want to lose it, you'll have to wait another year in order not to be penalized with that 6%. So, I'm not sure if you remember the story of the gentleman of Vinec. He retired at age 60, got his pension from Vinec. His pension age was 63. It fell within this period. But he could not wait until 63 because his bills are still the same or mounted. Everybody may not be blessed at the time of their retirement where the big major bills are paid off. That's a reality. Different circumstances. So he had to take his NS pension early. So 63 was his year. He took it when he was 60, 6% every year. So he lost 18% of his earnings. And when you might say, oh, you ain't doing anything yet. You ain't doing anything yet. So we'll go on to the next slide. Gradually increase the age at which reduced age pensions or early pensions are awarded from 60 to 62 and continue the increase of full age pensions to 67. So you hear that? What? Indeed. So for pension right now, we can take pension at 60. Right now we're saying, yeah, everybody living longer, let's take it up to 62. So if you retire, I always like to use the example of the gentleman at Vinec. At 60 he got his pension. His bills, he needed help obviously, so he had to take it at 60. But this is saying, so you would have to wait 2 years, so you would just be surviving on one pension. And I always say, from having discussions with persons, people generally take their pensions early for 2 reasons. One, they don't trust. They have, there's a distrust in a particular system. They're not confident, so they want to take it early just in case. Or two, things are hard, and you need your money to help keep you afloat. That's the only reason, generally, from the story, from the persons I've spoken to. Those are the main 2 reasons people take their pensions early. So they're saying we want to increase the early age from 60 to 62. And the full age pension, remember, we're heading towards 65. They say we want to increase it to 67. So you have to wait until 67. Just 3 short of the 3 score and 10. That is what we're one of the recommendations. Increase the reduction factors that apply to early age pensions from 0.5% per month, which is 6% per year, to as much as 0.75% per month or 9% per year in an effort to discourage early pensions. What does this mean? So let me use myself as an example. Just how much, if I take it only 1 year, how much percentage am I losing? Current 6%. 6% every year. What they're saying is, so let's say Kijo, in 60, I decided I want to take it early, 65 is my year. So that's 5 by 6. I lose 30% of my pension. Because I need it. I'll probably, But they say 30%, people still taking it. Let me carry it up to 9%. So we're talking about 45%, almost 50%. Almost 50% of your earnings. Well, I've been told to say half. Well, I can't say half, I can only say almost half. Right? If we round it off, it's half. So let's round it off. 50%. But it's 45%, you round it off 50%. Almost half of your earnings will be gone. And that is something that, as they said, they're making it clear, it's to discourage you taking it all without taking into consideration the cost of living, the livelihoods of people, these things will impact how people live. It's a serious recommendation that has serious implications. Make the pension formula explicitly progressive. So they're saying a lower pension rate for higher income levels. So this one is saying, for example, let's say your salary is 4,000. The percentage that is going to be applied to your salary is 45%. They say it's okay. As it is now, it will be 45% of the 4,000, that would be a pension. What they say is we want to have a formula where those at the higher end, whichever figure they might use, let's say 4,000 is the higher figure, instead of the 45%, we only do 45% on the first 3,000, and then a 40% on the 1,000. So that's how they plan it to do. So it will reduce what you're making. So instead of 45 on the full 4,000, we'll do 45% on the 3,000, the first 3,000, and then the next, anything under that will be at a lower percentage. So it's a smaller take-home pay, depending on how small it would depend on what percentage they're going to use. Next slide, please. Review the composition of the investment committee. And we spoke about that a bit earlier. So that 2 of the 3 board members are replaced by 2 non-board members with investment or financial experience. Remember we spoke about the investment committee is made up of 5 board members who make recommendations to themselves. And what the actuary said, he said, listen, you have 5. This is what he said. He said the chairman of the board should not be the chairman of the committee. That's what he said. That's what he said. The next thing he said, 2 of the board members that you have, I want you to replace them with 2 non-board members. And he said this is to enhance the independence of the board, the impartiality of the board, the accountability of the board, the transparency of the board. And to me, just speaking about it, it's common sense. You can't have somebody recommending to yourself, what is the purpose of the committee then? Now, make NIS registration and payment of contributions mandatory for all self-employed and informal sector workers. They speak about, make, as I said, people don't have the option. They want to encourage people, the self-employed and informal, to come in and, they want to encourage you. But now they say they want to make it mandatory, but they themselves have admitted that it's something that is not easy to implement and it's difficult to monitor. And even in other countries, they realize that it has even countries where it's mandatory, still a problem with that. So that's something that is a recommendation. Implement new technologies that will allow self-employed persons and informal sector workers to easily pay contributions to and receive benefits from the NIS. So maybe you have a farmer, fisherman, they'd be able to maybe create an app or something where they can just pay or receive the benefits electronically to encourage them. So next slide, please. Improve contribution compliance through effective linkages with government departments that issue permits to businesses and self-employed persons. Basically, what they say is, listen, people don't comply. Because as you know, we see from time to time with van drivers or somebody who drove recklessly, they pull their license. They say, listen, if you don't comply, you can't conduct business. You can't you might not be able to import, you're not getting an import license, export license, a trade license. You're not able to do certain things for your business if you do not comply with the NIS. And this is something that you actually seem to be passionate about. You say we have to get serious if we want to improve the contribution compliance. However, from reading the report, it does not seem, while the contribution compliance is not 100%, it does not seem to be a major factor. Nevertheless, you want to collect everything as much as you can. Share openly with the public this report of the 11th Actuarial Review, recent audited financial statements, and board's plan to ensure the long-term sustainability of the National Insurance Fund. This report should be placed on the NS website. Listen, this was said in the 10th Actuarial Review, we're still waiting for that. We had to, Brother John mentioned it, we had to fight this on a strong word. But we had to, I don't want to say kick up here. Pull teeth. We had to go to war, that's a strong term, but we had to do more than we should, that we needed to, in order to get this document. The Brother John said he was surprised when he did a pull up. I think he probably thought it was a drive-by, but then he said NS, a drive-by can have with NS. But he was surprised when he saw the vehicle coming up there and dropping off the report. But we had to, it was a struggle to get this report. And the 10th is still not made available to the public. Well, if we ain't get the 10th, we don't have the 9th and the 8th and the 7th license. That is a problem. Next one, please. This one is considered a 2 medium, which I find is a little strange with administrative courses in the medium category. I thought it would have been high. It is something that from the 10th Actuarial Review, even to now, the report says, it basically said this NS need to reduce your administrative costs. And it says, if you cannot contain it, this has the capability, the potential to reduce the fund, maybe for deplete quicker than it should. You have to manage your expenses. And that is something that the actuary has repeatedly stressed. But it seems as if opposites attract. Because the actuary said to reduce, but every year the administrative costs increase. So I am saying the next time the actuary should say seek ways to increase the administrative costs. And then the persons in the NS will say, what kind of madness is this? And then we reduce it. So that is what I'm saying. But every time he says reduce, the cost increase. Consider allowing those in receipt of an age or invalidity pension to also receive a portion of the survivor's pension if they meet the eligibility condition for both pensions. So as it is right now, if I'm married, your wife and I live to see that particular age, God stay our lives, and we're receiving age pension. Who should I say pass first? One of us pass first. And you are entitled, you're not entitled to pensions, you're entitled to be higher. But this is saying, now listen, you could keep, whichever one of us is still living, can keep the pension and we'll give you a portion of the survivor's pension. So we are hoping that, if that is the case, that combination will be better or higher than the other option as it is right now. For sickness, maternity, and injury benefits, revise the days for which benefits are paid to exclude one day instead of Sunday in every case. So let's say you sick, maternity, injury, you're out from Monday to Sunday. As it is now, you'll be paid for every day except Sunday. So if it's Monday to Friday, you get paid every day, but Sunday is not included. Saturday, good. That's the Sabbath. I'm a Sabbath keeper. But what they say is, I don't really like that equation. Once you have a period of Monday to Friday, we take it on one day. We don't give it Sunday now. So if you go Monday to Friday, a day is coming up. You're not being paid for one day. If it's Monday to Saturday, you're not being paid for one day. So it is something that is not an advantage to the person who is sick, somebody. Correct. You're being penalized. Correct. Correct. And as you see, most of the recommendations, it's not in favor of the contributor. Next slide, please. Now, we make a stop off. As you're taking a flight, it's not a straight flight, we make a small stop. Make a small stop off here to talk about the government's proposed change to the public service union, the public service pension, sorry. And we're going to touch a bit on that also. In the ministerial statement, the minister spoke about these three particular changes, and he said that they would apply to new entrants. So he said introduce a mandatory contribution rate for employees. As we know, the public service workers and myself, we don't contribute to our pension fund like how we do with NAS. Now some people say we pay tax, that's the contribution. I'm not going to argue with that. But we do not contribute to a pension fund. So they say, listen, introduce a mandatory contribution rate for that. Align the retirement age of civil servants with the NIS pensionable age. Right now, compulsory age for public servants is 60. They say, listen, we want it to be aligned with the NIS. So the NIS is 65, we want to shift it to 65. Right? Limit the maximum replacement rate from 127%, or what they claim to be 127%, to about 85%, by configuring a top-up on the NAS pension. So the claim is that when public servants retire, they get 127%. They say we want to reduce that to about 85%, so the NAS will pay, and whatever portion the NAS pay, we will pay the balance, the government. So if NAS pays you 60% of what you were earning, or what you do, we'll pay 20%. So if you suppose you get 85% of what you were earning, the NAS pays 55%, then we will pay the balance. That is what the government is saying. Next slide. But I want to address the 127% is something that I don't know, needs to be addressed. Right. Now, I'm going to ask a question. Listen carefully. Is it possible? We have spaceships, we have space. Is it possible for any of us here to go to space? Is it possible? No, I ask you if it's going to happen. Is it possible? It is possible. 127% is possible. Is it likely that anybody here is going to be in space? Give me a percentage. Just give me a percent. Will you take your... Somebody says 0.5. Sister Ruth, the chances of somebody getting 127% is lower than 0.5. It is basically zero. As in, I wouldn't say it's zero, but the chances of you getting it is 0.5. No. Let's look at the criteria to try to get to 127 or to get to 127. Because we have to deal with what has happened before and what is likely to happen. In order to even qualify for 127%, and I don't know anybody who's ever qualified. Done the research, questions, if anybody found anybody, bring it to me. And if you found anybody, you can find more than a handful. If you have to work in public service for 33 and 30 years, that's the first criteria. The next criteria is when you're retired, you have two pension options. Do we know that? We have what is called a full pension option, which is 67% of what you were making, but you do not get a gratuity. Two options. When you retire, they will send a letter and say, okay, what is your option? Choose the option. If you don't choose it, automatically give you the other default option. So you have two options. The full pension, which is 67% of what you were making, however, you do not get a gratuity, a lump sum payment. You just get 67% of what you were making. The next option, which 99.99999% of people take, is the reduced pension option, which is 50% of what you were making plus a lump sum. 99.9, I only know I'm aware of 2 or 3 persons who ever took full pension in the history of public service. Now, say you do the 33 at all, full pension, your salary has to be approximately 4,345 or less. Some people say it has to be the highest. That's incorrect based on calculations. It's the 127% if you satisfy all the criteria for those on the lower end of the salary scale. I always say, listen, reading Rainbow, remember reading Rainbow, don't take my word for it. You have the estimates, go in the back of the estimates, there are the salaries for the positions, get the Pension Act, calculate the pension for yourself, get the NIS, look on the NIS website, see their calculations, and do it for yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Right? Now, we satisfy the public service, so we satisfy this criteria over here. Now we have to come to the NIS side. We have to make about 45 years of contributions to the NIS. How many of us think we're going to make 45 years of contribution? And then, remember now, you still have to live to 65. So, realistically, people make what you get is 71 to 105% for public servants. And those from 90 to 100% is those on the lower end of the scale. The 127 is something that is misleading, and it is being used to say, oh, public servants really, and that is a need for pension reform. That is not the reason for pension reform. And if that was the reason, then they need pension reform. Because this is not anything for us to worry about. As I said, somebody said 0.5%, we have a greater chance of going to space than 127% will achieve. So I want us to keep that in mind. Next slide, please. Now, these are our recommendations, and as Mr. Fiona said, if you are in agreement, you kindly indicate, or if you have a comment or anything, just simply say. We believe that proper representation is needed, especially as it relates to the employee representative. The Act says you need to consult with the trade unions who we know are the teachers union and the public service union are not consulted when it comes to appointing or selecting someone to represent employees. So we are saying, listen, we want to amend the NIS Act to include one selected representative from the Police Welfare Association, the Public Service Union, and the Teachers Union. We say, and this appointment, obviously, we say, listen, whether it's done through an executive meeting or a general meeting with the members of KSU for the SI Teachers Union, and then a name is selected, but the selection must come from the relevant entities that we have there. So that is the first recommendation that we have. Oh, sorry, go back, please. Amend the composition of the investment committee to a new chairman, not the chairman of the board, because that is what the actually recommend. We agree with that. The chairman of the board should not be the chairman of the committee. The director of the NS, one member of the board, and 2 non-board members with investment. So we basically agree with the actuary. We say, listen, the 5 members we have no problem with. The director, 1 board member, the chairman should be a different chairman, not the one on the board. And we want 2 non-board members to be on the investment committee. It will increase the level of independence, impartiality, transparency. And that is very important. And even if we just go back to the amendment of the Act, it is important that there are differing voices on a board. Some people might say, I remember Dr. Vala Henry, the deputy director of the Eastern Caribbean, etc. She said when she was the chairman of the social services in Dominica, she said that 2 opposition members made up the membership of the board. And she said, boy, people were surprised. Because normally it would be just whoever's in the party, everybody. She said the board worked like a charm, like a dream. So it's very important that we have different voices inside the board to enhance the independence, the transparency of the board. And the integrity also, as I said. Now, increase the contribution rate from 10 to 15%. We agree that because there needs to be an increase. The actuary said at least 15%. We say, okay, we'll stick. We don't want to go past. We'll stick with at least 15%. And we're saying is, listen, we don't know how they're going to portion it. If they're going to do 2.5% each, or 2.75 to the employer, 2.25. But what we're saying is, listen, whichever way you go, we believe it should be a 0.25% or 0.5%. So, for example, the employee from start, let's say it's adopted in 2024. The increase should be 0.25% for the employee, 0.25% for the employer, or 0.5% for the employee, or 0.5% for the employer. What this will do is that little by little BNS will get their contributions, but also it takes into consideration the high cost of living in cities. Because just recently fuel went up. So by doing it this way, both parties benefit. The NAS will get its money, the fund should be extended by maybe 10 or 12 years, and it's not too difficult or harsh on the contributor, on the citizens. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. Reduce the accrual rate from 60 to 55%. We have to work generally 45 days for that. We are in agreement with that. They give and take certain things. So we are in agreement with reducing that rate from 60 to 55%. Reduce the cumulative reduction factor for early age pension to 3% per year instead of 6%. Remember, they're looking to increase from 6 to 9. We're saying is, how about we increase it from 6 to 3? But let it be done over a period of time. So just for an example, you might say, okay, next year, you might go to, let's just say 5.5 or 5. And then it can be monitored as you do reviews to see what is the impact on the fund. But we're saying it should not be increased. How about a decrease? And then it can be reviewed as we go forward. But clearly, no increase in pension age. We didn't have a discussion about it. And it's not even up for discussion. No increase in the early age from 60 to 62. And no increase from 65 to 67. Now that's a no sort of elaboration or anything is needed. We say no to that. Next one. Increase the insurable earnings from 4,333 to 4,500 in 2025 to 4,750, 5,029. What is insurable earnings? It's also called the wage ceiling. So if I make, as it is now, the wage ceiling is $4,333. If you make more than that, the NS is not concerned with that because they only insure $4,333. So when you're calculating your pension, anything, if you're making more than that, it's only 4,000 percentage is going to be calculated on 4,333. So what we're saying is, so basically the highest actually, the most that you can get from NS is $2,600. You're making $10,000 and I'm making $5,000. The most both of us can get is $2,600. You're making $1 million and I'm making $5,000. The cap is $4,333, $2,600. So we're saying is, listen, let's increase it a little bit over a period of time. You know, then you can analyze and see, okay, is it taking too much out of the fund? You know, that sort of analysis. And one of the things that we've heard is that if they increase it, it only affects about 6% of persons. 60% of persons who are in the NIS. But that is not taking into consideration who is in my household. I may be the breadwinner in my household. My wife may be minimum wage worker. So even though you might see 6%, the impact is way higher than 6%. So that is something we have to consider as opposed to just looking at, okay, it only affects 6%, so it's not something we should really go into or really consider. It affects more than 6%. It affects households and it affects livelihood. Pension increase for pensioners as follows. For persons, well, before that, the last pension increase we had, I think, was around in 2014, and it only impacted persons who received the pensions from 2010 and before. So there was a pension increase for those who received the pensions in 2010. So we're saying, listen, persons who received the pension from 2011 onward, we believe they should have an increase based on the fact that they didn't have an increase and things have, the cost of living has gone. And taking information from the statistical office, inflation rates and so forth, these are the percentages we have come up. So for persons who received the pension or got the pension in 2011 to 2013, we're looking at a 10% increase for them. And for those from 2014 after, a 5% increase. So this one, we may consider allowing those in receipt of an age invalidity pension to also receive a portion of survivor's pension if they meet the eligibility conditions. So this is in agreement with what the actuary said. We actually think this was a good one, and we are in agreement with this. Basically, as we said before, you can only get one of both pensions. What we're saying is, listen, somebody died, you get to keep your pension and also get a portion of their pension. So we are in agreement with this recommendation. Now, administrative costs. As mentioned before, the actuary spoke about this strongly, and we're saying that this has need to reduce 10 to 14% of the contributions is what it should be. But right now, it is about 17%. Look at the figures over here. From 2017, it was 10.4 million. The actuary said, this man, you need to reduce this thing. They said, no problem, it goes up to 11.1. Say, man, you need to reduce this thing, no problem, it goes up 11.7. Man, come on, do better than that. 2021, the last figure we had was 12.5. So the administrative costs increased over about 2 million, within our 5-year period, 4-year, 5-year period. And that is something that we have to be mindful of. Actually, based on the actual review, the management or the NAS in Svgpsu is one of the most inefficiently run or expensively run administrations in the OECS. I think it's only Montserrat and Anguilla. It's either Montserrat and Bahamas or Montserrat and Anguilla are the only ones who operate at a higher level in terms of expenses than us. So that is something that clearly needs to be adjusted. Reduce or eliminate discretionary expenses. Discretionary expenses are things that are non-essential, not necessary for the running of the organization. And that was a recommendation that came from the auditor. Those who audited NIS books say, listen, you need to reduce or eliminate your discretionary expenses. And things that fall into this are the same bursaries, the same $500. How does that add to national insurance fund? Let's think about it. What returns are you getting? What financial returns are you getting from that? The non-contributory pension. What financial returns are you getting from these things? Reduce or eliminate them. They are not essential to the running of the national insurance service. Mandate a fixed amount of compensation that is paid to the board. This is important because we don't know how much you're getting paid. Our money is, and we don't know how much you're getting paid. And the fact that you don't know, because for public servants, our salaries, our scale is in estimates. We don't know how much the directors are getting paid. We don't know what the board members are getting. Could be 8,000, 9,000, we don't have a clue. So the fact that, as Brother John was saying, when you don't give information, then you start to hear things. There's claims that it's about $1,500 a meeting. I'm just saying claims. No, this will happen because we don't know. It is not made public. It's not available. We have to have a council because it is our money, the money that are coming from the fund to pay these things. So we need to know how much I'm not a fan of meetings, unless we have to. But if it's $1,500 meeting, it's a meeting for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have 3 meetings a day. I'm just telling you. I'm just joking. I'm just joking for. But I'm just saying is, that's the claim, $1,500 a week. Don't know, but that is the claim. So we say we need to mandate a fixed amount so that we can know that this is how much they are supposed to get. Now, this is something I find is very important, and I'm surprised that this was never an option. Amend the NAS Act to make it mandatory for the NAS to hold an annual general meeting, so that we can come here and ask you relevant questions. So, to bring us up to date on NAS activities and to answer our questions, I think that is something that is reasonable. So we can say, listen, what we're doing with the money, these investments, question these things. And normally when people really have to come to the public, they normally operate in a more cautious manner because they don't want to face the public. But that is something that we believe the act should be amended to ensure that the NAS holds an annual general meeting, or AGM, as we know it by. The NAS, this is one we agree with the actuary. They must prepare 2 new policies, the benefits policy, we spoke about that. Mandate that all relevant documents, statement of security and investments, actuary reports, annual reports, funding and investment policies, etc., will be made promptly available upon request by the unions, association, chamber of commerce, etc. Entities that represent employers, employees. If we ask for certain documents, we should be able to get them. I mean, I can't see why that should be correct. It should be made publicly available. I quite agree that. We should not have to ask because it should be publicly available. But if we have to ask, then there should not be any sort of reluctance. And as far as I'm aware, the actuary agreed that we have the right to ask, despite the reservation and reluctance on the part of the NAS in giving us the documents. So we are contributing, and the actuary says it is within the right of the unions and whomever to ask for these documents so that we could educate our members and so forth. But the NAS is saying, we don't want to give you the documents. We don't think you should. That is a cause for concern. Anytime you hear people don't want to make documents available, it's a cause for concern. No proposal or amendment to parametric factors and benefits can be made without the public submission of relevant and timely actuarial and annual reports, as well as the benefits and fund policy. Listen, we're saying is watch. You want to make changes, we say no changes should be made unless we have the relevant information. As Brother John said, the 11th actuarial review for the period 2019 was completed in 2021, August 2021. You know when we got the document? August 2023. For reform to take place in 2024. Who do you feel like a drifting? Just think about that. 2 years after we got the document. No, there are lots more information we'd like to share, but because of the time is getting closer to what the policymakers want to do, so we have to put forward submissions. We don't have the time. So we're saying is unless we have the relevant documents and deliver to us in a timely manner, no changes should be made. All proposed parametric changes by the NAS should be placed on hold until the NAS Act is amended to reflect the proposed legal changes. Otherwise, as we say, we're spending tapping money. We're saying is, listen, the amendment to the board, the amendment to the investment committee, the amendment to have the AGM, we must have these things enshrined in law before anything else, before we accept any sort of changes. These things must happen. They are important for accountability, transparency, because we need to build public trust, and that is something the actuary stressed. Before you embark on these reforms, you need to build the public trust. That is something that was stressed by the actuary. Now, we're coming to the end. Now, we also made some recommendations as it relates to the public service pension. I believe for those who are public servants, there are some things there that you would You find nice, you know? I put a smile on your face. So, all new entrants and existing non-pensionable officers will be granted a pension under a 2-tier system. That's the recommendation. The amount of this pension shall not be less than 80% of your final salary and shall be financed by the NIS and the Consolidated Fund. So what we're saying is those who are now coming in, because the pension laws that we are bound by for public servants are the laws that were in effect when we were appointed. So anything that is, any changes that happen after will affect those who come in at that particular time. We have the option of choosing whichever option we deem to be best for us. We could stay with the one that was in effect when we were appointed, or if one is made after, we could choose to accept that, whichever we deem is best for us. So we're saying persons who are non-pensionable, we're saying we're looking out for you. We're saying that you will be granted a pension under a 2-tier system. So the NIS pays a portion, the government pays a portion, not less than 80% of your final salary. So even though you may not be a member of the union is still looking out for you. And that is what we call true representation. So even if you don't support the union, we still love you and we still support you. So keep that in mind. For the exit, yeah, this is the one. It puts a smile on my face. A pension shall be granted to any pensionable public servant who has worked continuously in the public service for 20 or more years. Yeah. I have a feeling this one, Sarge. And the Sarge will be familiar with this, Sarge. So, we're saying that if you work 20 years continuously, you just have a normal vacation and so forth, you are eligible for your pension and your gratuity. And I think that is something that will be well received by most public servants. And remember, if you don't want to go, you could remain. That is your choice. The pensionable officer may be eligible for gratuity and a deferred pension calculated at the date of his retirement in the following circumstance: when the pensionable officer resigns from the public service with 10 years or more service. Now we're saying is, listen, you're not going to leave with nothing, or you're not going to leave with absolutely zero. We're saying is, if you do 10 years, 10 to 19 years, so this, you will be eligible for gratuity. But at the age of retirement, at the retirement age, you will get a pension calculated on the amount of years you put in. So it's a deferred pension. So you get to go home with your gratuity, and at the age 60, as it is now, then you will start to get pension based on the number of years you would have worked in the service. Alright? Retirement may be granted on or after attaining the age of 55, as is. And a pensionable or non-pensionable officer may be required to compulsory retire from the public service anytime after he or she attains the age of 65, or whichever age is the pensionable age. So, the increase in the age to whatever, to be in line with the NIS, 65. But it is your option if you want to work up to that particular period. You can take all retirement from any time from 55 to whatever the NIS age is. So it's really up to you. So if you said, boy, things hard and I don't want to leave at 60, you can work up to 65, 63, 64, however long, until whatever the compulsory date is. So that is another recommendation. And as we conclude, this is from the actuary himself, in the actuary report. He's talking about establish strong governance system to build and maintain public trust. That is very important. To build public trust, it saves a lot of headache if we're fully transparent with people. It saves us a lot of problems. I always say, I don't think the unions want to come here and have to do these things. If everybody is a company holds themselves to high levels of integrity, accountability, and transparency, it makes your job much easier. You won't have a job. So that is what And he's talking about, he said, boards comprise of representatives of government and civil society groups as the union may go a long way in enhancing trust. And notice he said the boards comprise of both of them, both the unions and the government. Government representatives may go a long way in enhancing trust. Just imagine if we have unions who you know are representing you and will fight for you. And then you have these unions working along with the government representatives. That is, I would say, that goes a long way in enhancing trust, because you know that they will continue to fight for you and to keep all whomever accountable. So it is very important that the boards be comprised of both of these entities. Major elements of the governance system should include boards and investment committees with the requisite level of independence and expertise. And that is the end of the presentation. So the main things that we can take away is, well, as I would say, is we have seen the recommendations put forward. The NAS changes have to take place. That goes without saying. We have said that what caused the changes, through pension, through investment, through unemployment, various things, administrative costs. A lot of things play a part in reducing employment. And because of the design of the NAS system, reform will have to take place every now and then. We have put forward the actuary's recommendation and also the committee's recommendation. And we're bringing it to you to find out, are you happy with the recommendations put forward by the committee? Is there anything you want clarification on? Is there anything you want to add? Do you want to subtract? Let us know. And then before we submit to the powers that be, as one body, because where there is unity, where we have that one strength, where we're in one accord, a lot of things can be accomplished. And let me just see what is after that, I think, after that slide. And these are just the references. So, you can see, these are where we got, our information, the sources. It's always important so that you can go. We have the 10th and 11th actual review, the 2023 ministerial statement. There were some budget addresses. I forgot to put that in. National Insurance Act, the annual reports for the NIS, National Insurance Service annual reports, the Pension Act, the Police Act. So all of these things went into formulating what we have here. And the last slide, I think, is, and we just want to say thank you for everyone for those, coming out, those who are physically here, and those who are viewing online. We really appreciate, your attendance, and we hope that there will be greater things going forward as it relates to the parametric reform. And just before Fiona goes, I must say that I want to give a big shout out to the pension committee. And, walking along, I always believe in giving kudos to persons. And special praise must go to great organizers and Sister Shelly Ann and Sister Fiona. Listen to me. When you have excellent people behind you, your work is made easier. And then we have the sage advice from our Solomons, the leaders, Brother Boucher and Brother Robbie. Brother Robbie still awake? I think so. All right, just checking. Brother, these people, these men they've worked assiduously with us and have given us, lots of knowledge as it relates, to the pension committee, to give us the relevant guidance and so forth. And I can't forget Brother John, Andrew John, the chairman. Listen to me. Listen. Brother John has me. I'm excited about retirement. I can't wait to retire. Sometimes me and the wife have this argument about who's going to take all the retirement, right? I am so excited about retirement, but after watching Brother John seems to work harder in retirement than when he was working. So now I'm a bit skeptical about retiring now. You understand? But he has been of great support, guidance, and he's an excellent plan, and he works very hard. And what we see here is the fruit of all the hard work that the pension committee and the persons mentioned they have put in. So I know we could give them a round of applause for all the hard work. And thank you for being here. And this was done for you. So we have to say thank you for showing the relevant interest, because it could not have been done without the interest and the participation of the persons present.
All right, just before we speak, thank you very much, Brother Kedro. We really appreciate that in-depth analysis of the NIS pension report, what they're saying, what we're saying. Now, we open the floors for questions, and right away I see hands are going up. So, kindly, is the mic on, Monty? Just let him make sure that the mic is on, and you could go ahead. Questions, statements, concerns, recommendations, all of those things we are open to.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nikisha Williams, and it really is a pleasure to be here this evening. I'm really happy for this town hall meeting for more reasons than one. For one, we've been hearing more from the NIS, and they're trying to bamboozle people's heads and you know, justify the nonsense that they've been doing over the years. And we have seen that even in the way that they try to keep certain documents out of the public domain. Thank you for the work that you have been doing to the committee. We really appreciate it. And I'm speaking generally here because I remember when I sat on the executive of the SVGTU, another committee was put in place, and we end up with a one-page document. Remember, Andrew? From the then, remember Smitty? Remember? From the then chairman, who is now Minister of Education. So we saw that being a complete waste of time, energy, and effort. This committee came together, and you have really produced. And we really must commend everyone that had a hand in it. My concern this evening is for teachers or employees of government who were fired in 2021. In 2021 would have made 19 years of service for myself and a number of others. There was that break of, for me, it was 13 months. For others, well, you know, they're still at home. So I would like to know, how do we meet so that, because, I mean, the court judgment has already gone in our favor, and we know where the second round is going to go. How do we then apply that? Would the years of service, would that disruption in service be considered a disruption, or would we just mosey on like we never left in the first place?
Thank you very much, Sister Williams. I know we have President Robbie somewhere around there too. I don't know if you want to share on this. But one of the things that we have been saying, well, when I say I'm including myself in the court decision, basically, because the courts have already ruled that the workers never lost their jobs in the first place. So this next phase where we are going into the appeal that they really so foolishly went ahead and filed, right? When you lose a case like that, the lawyers will say, but they just accept the judgment of the court. It doesn't make any sense to really appeal. So we are hoping that the appeal is heard and the ruling of the judge is upheld. Once that is upheld, then you will mosey along, as you said. Because as it is now, where persons would have reapplied, they were not reinstated. And we have seen that in the appointments that they have brought out in the Gazette, where they appointed people back from the beginning. Some persons now who have been applying for leave have been told that they have not done a year, and so they're not entitled to leave, right? Some of them are not being given anything at all in terms of, any benefits. You have to wait for that time. So a lot depends on the ruling of the courts. And I'm confident that we will get a ruling in our favor. so that persons can reap the benefits which they have worked so hard to get. Right? So keep faith, Sister Williams, and let us hope that by the 29th of January we could have this matter put to rest once and for all. I don't know if anybody wants to add.
We have a next question. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joel Poyer. Nice report. I must congratulate all who contributed towards it. But I have an aspect that I think we keep on not looking at. There are workers, I come from a civil servant also, those daily paid workers who are represented by the CTW and NWM. They are our brothers also. And I think we should also include these things towards them. Because sometimes some of them, based on the year of service and their technicality, they move into the service as permanent civil servants. So, in looking forward, I think that aspect needs to be checked on. Another area in the conclusion.
Mr. Shelley, and bring up the conclusion first, please. Thank you.
I think we ought to mention it as a tripartite, including other employers, and not just the government alone. So they also should be part of the board of the decision making. And the final aspect is that we need to look into a deep in-depth in the finance of the NIS. And what I'm talking about, I knew there from way back when it started, a number of workers were using names that was not rightfully theirs. Some would borrow other people's things, because I had situations where I was working at forestry where we take on workers and somebody would name Reuben John. But then later on now, you would find out that this first name is not Reuben John, but John Jones. And a lot of these money were contributed, and then at the end of the day, I had to go personally to NIS with 3 workers and show where they were using different names in order to combine to get their benefit. Some persons have never ever got their benefit. And those money were left be and was just used. And persons have been disenfranchised. A lot of workers, should have that aspect that we need to look into for those workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Poyer. And we'll...
Just before.
No, I was just saying that we would try to get the leaders, you see the leaders of those representing those workers, we would definitely have to have a conversation with them. I think they need to be on board with us. This is a matter that will gravely affect the workers, as you have said. We have tried to include as much as possible. You remember, Brother Kijo would have mentioned, asking that all workers coming into the service, whether they're paid or not, be made pensionable, because it's a big issue. And it is not really affecting so many teachers and public servants as those workers whom we would have referred to. So we need to have those persons who are representing these persons come on board and offer proper representation to their members, right? But we'll try to open a conversation with them because it's very important.
One thing that I miss, because it happened last week, we have worker, past worker at forestry. She has retired, he went up to NIS to get, he's getting, I think, his 175 a fortnight.
Retired?
Yeah.
Okay.
After 35 years of work in the field, and I'm telling you, those workers work. They really work. They are responsible for the forest that we have. And it pains me to see that is $350 a month. And persons who made no contribution are getting more than these workers. It hurt me. And something needs to be looked into to address that aspect too. It hurt me.
I agree with you. I also thank you for raising that issue, because one of the things we realized when we embarked on this project is that some of the posts who's receiving NIS pension receive a very, very low pension. One post who told me she received, I think, is $108 per fortnight, and that is supposed to keep that person for the month $216. And then we wonder, how did the NIS get to where it is? You know, paying out some of these pensions that they have been paid, which really should not. This NIS should not be in this position where it is now. So I agree with you that we need to look into that. And we could also have input from our ex officio members if they can feel free to jump in, as the case may be. So thank you very much, Brother Poya.
I am sure they will jump in.
Right.
Just to be clear, and Sister Shannon, can you bring up some of our recommendations so that persons can familiarize themselves if they want to add or take anything away? We do have a question from online. This is, if you have to retire at age 60, this is from Sharon Doyle, if you have to retire at age 60 and you have one more year to go, can you ask for early retirement? That's the first question. And if so, how would it affect your pension from the retirement?
Only if she says she's supposed to retire at age 60.
Right.
I believe she's talking about the public.
I believe so.
Service, public service. Well, as long as she would have done her 33 and a third years, which if she's at that age, she should have, as long as she didn't break service, she should be able to receive a fair amount. You know, she would only have lost, well, it's 1 year actual working salary, because the 1 year would not really affect so much what she would receive. So I think she would be pleased to know that she could leave if she wished. She could ask for early retirement. At that stage, she would not be losing a large, anything significant. Thank you very much.
Any other question from the floor?
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brendan Smith. I just want to, Mr. Chairman, to congratulate you and your committee on an excellent job. Well done. And my boss indicated that the presenter today was also excellent. So he wants to congratulate you as well. I just made mention by Sister Williams about the previous report. Disappointed, I must say, but you have really done us proud, and we just want you to continue to go forward with it. You made mention of something in your recommendations. It relates to the 20 years, 10 years gratuity. Now, I am not a selfish person by any means, and I would like to see public servants and teachers get that. In fact, it can be very well a good strategy, not just strategy in terms of saying it out, but meaningful and actually politically that my party could kick up. So I want to thank you for that. But also, how do you see a pushback? Because that 20 years and gratuity has seemed to be something that was earmarked for police based on the whole idea of the extra work that they would have done and the stingent kind of work that police would have done over the years. How would you push back from even the government saying that was a specially earmarked certain police officers based on their routine and their duties? That's something in which you ought to look at and see those pushbacks. So that is something in which I am very interested in. But I am happy for all public servants and teachers to benefit from this. And in fact, I think it will keep us in the system and make them, do big work harder and probably leave that full time. Thanks.
If I may comment on that little bit. If I may comment on that, that is not something new in the region. St. Lucia's been doing that from the very jump. And what their rationale is simply that by collecting a gratuity after 20 years, a lot more Lucians are able to go into private business and therefore jumpstart the economy in a way that St. Lucia alone in the region can understand. Right. So
Brother Smith, we're going to need me 20 years money. And one more thing. The recommendation that involves the 3% over instead of the 6%, I too see that as a way that adds back, because all of these things bring money back into our economy. An economy that is, as much as they say that it is growing, I think they mean they're growing backwards, because we keep realizing that our spending power is shrinking by the second. Mm-hmm. What we could have done with $100 5 years ago, the value is now about what, $80, $75. You know what I'm saying? So these sort of recommendations, and once we could get people to keep their hands out of the cookie jar, I honestly believe that we are really on to something. So again, congratulations.
And I think one of the things we have to realize, while Brother Brenton mentioned that, that was a thing for police years ago because of the strenuous nature of their jobs, we have to understand that teachers and even nurses and other civil servants now have that sort of nature in their jobs. Jobs have become more strenuous, mentally demanding, emotionally demanding, physically demanding. We have instances where teachers are being attacked at schools, nurses are being attacked at the hospital, different things. So it is something that really should be taken into consideration all across the board, not just for one group of workers. Before I allow Brother Robinson to speak, Sister Shelley, just allow us to bring up that 3% recommendation so that persons can mull it over a bit. Yeah. This is it? So, Sister Nakisha, you're saying that this is...
That's wonderful.
Okay, that's wonderful. I don't know if we can have a vote at this time about that particular recommendation, or if we wish to wait, if persons need to think it over a little bit more, you can let me know. Okay. Is there anybody who disagrees with this recommendation that instead of increasing it to 9%, which is the early retirement, if you ask for your NIS pension early, instead of carrying it to 9%, perhaps it should be reduced to 3% in order to, make things a bit easier for persons, even if it's overtime. Okay, it seems as though everybody is agreeing. I'm seeing the nodding of heads in a yes. Do I hear yes? Yes. Okay, yes, I hear yes. Okay, thank you. Brother Robbie.
Okay, thank you. My name is Oswald Robinson. I want to, first of all, thank the committee for a great job. I'm very pleased. I can't really find the words to express, the depth, the quality of work that you have done. I'm very happy, not only here, but in the airways, and the sacrifices that you have made away from your families, working overnight, all up to 8, 9 o'clock in the night, and want to appreciate the families for the sacrifices they make on your behalf. It's not easy to be away from your family when you're doing this kind of work. I want to endorse what my sister Nakisha Williams would have said, okay, in looking at what happened before and now, and that even places a greater value on the work you have done. So we need to give them another round of applause. I want to appreciate my brother Boucher, PSU, and the Public Police Welfare Association for really coming together. And this again is a manifestation. When we are together, we're able to accomplish great things, right? One of the things I believe is that every worker must be pensionable. The whole issue of social security is universal, and it has become part of the agenda, the 2030 agenda, the Sustainable Development Goals. and we know it's a fundamental right. I am a little disappointed with the turnout here, and I'm using this to challenge the workers of all the organization. And because this, if you notice the leadership, we took a back seat because we wanted more people to come here and to share, especially the young people, you know, because this is going to impact a lot on the young people, right? I just want to pose a question because I couldn't remember, and I one of you could ask. One of the presenters made a statement about the reserve, what percentage we should try to target to having the reserve as based on the projected expense. You could remember that? There's a projection that was made at the NAS consultation to have a certain amount, right, reserve, in the reserve fund.
Yeah, I think if what you're speaking about, that was when they had the panel discussion.
Yes.
I can't remember which presenter. I'm thinking it is Vera. And she said that we should have at least, I think it's three times the amount of the expenses is what we should have in the reserve. So if our projected expenses maybe for the year, let's just say it's 84 million, we should have at least 3 times that amount in the reserves.
Right, thank you. The final point I want to make, and it came out, because I remember Brother Orcha was on a Viewpoint program, and Lou Brown was trying to refute. But the record is there to show that the Public Service Union and the St. Vincent Grand Teachers Union wrote the government on 2 occasions. And the 2 occasions had to do with when you had 2 different ministers of finance. When the Prime Minister was the Minister of Finance, we wrote and asked that the unions have a say in who represents us on the board. And the new Minister of Finance, his son, he wrote again. Nobody ever had the courtesy to say, I get your letter. You understand? And these kind of things, when you treat workers like that, and the workers' representative, which is the unions, it says, you know, I'm getting a little emotional, but so I have to stop. But I don't know if the committee could revisit the 20 and bring it down a little. Yeah? Because, I mean, one time when we negotiated in 2014, they had agreed to carry it down to 15. But remember, we never signed a collective agreement. Eh? But I want to reiterate the point that Brother John made for the purpose of those who have been deemed to have abandoned the job. The 29th of January 2024, we're looking forward to that date when we will have a victory. Because up to now, as far as I understand, the government can't find anything to appeal about. Remember they said they didn't have enough money. Well, if people flying all over the place now, we should be able to find money to pay the workers. And we're not giving up on this one. We want all the workers to be reinstated with all the benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Robinson. Do we have any other comments, questions, statements from the audience?
We need to have more town hall meetings. Yes.
Brother John, can you kindly,
we need to have more town hall meetings, and not just in Kingston. We need to go into the communities. We need to take every radio station, every TV program, every social media program. We need to go so hard that the government wouldn't even know what hit them. Because at the end of the day, that is the kind of energy that we need. We need to be more forceful than they are. We need to be more convincing than they are. We need to partner with every employer, every employee. We need to call mommy, auntie, granny, cousin, nana. We need to go so hard. They must not even know what hit them. Because at the end of the day, a lot of persons don't even know that this event is taking place. Only because I knew about it yesterday, because an employee in my office told me about it, because they know I would go to things like this. So if I didn't know, and I feel I am quite out there, then imagine a lot of other people didn't know. So I am, as much as I really want to beat up on Vincentians right now about not being a part of this conversation, because I was sort of excluded from it, I have to give them a pass this time. But for the next event, I'm not sure when you want to make these proposals, submit these proposals to government, but until then, please don't let this be a one-off thing. Please go into, use the community centers, because right now it's not about government employees, it's about every single employee. It's about every potential worker, because yes, we are on our, well, some of you are on all the way out, but we have a whole lot more on their way in. And because of this would affect school children, it would affect those in college. Even if we have to go to the college, use the resources that you have. Kidjo, you're doing a wonderful job. Great. Andrew, you too, and so does the rest of the committee. But include more people to be your mouthpieces, to be your hands and feet, because you can't do it alone. You should not have to do it alone. For as long as persons are willing to volunteer, take the help that you get and run with it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Sister Nikisha. And that is our plan. We actually are hoping to go into various communities to carry the message, and we are hoping that persons who are here will carry the message forward, you know, but we still have a certain window in which we have to do our submissions, because the proposed date for change is January 2024. So even if we make submissions with what we have, we still would continue the conversation, because at the end of the day, if our proposals are not agreed with, we have to take a stand, right? And we can't take a stand with a few people. We need everybody on board. As you say, if we could get it so that they don't know what hit them, you know? Because at the end of the day, you know, when Brother Robbie said the unions were asking for representatives, they weren't giving, they weren't even responding. And now they would come to you when things have fallen down, when things are falling apart, and expect you to carry all the burden of their mistakes. You see? So we should be involved intimately with the decision-making process. And I want to also use this opportunity to single out Brother Kijo. He is a find. We found him, and we are doing right now, we're into the process of getting him to join the teachers union. So Boucher, you might be in a little bit. But Kijo, very talented young man who has come willingly and bravely on board with us, and we really appreciate it. So we have, as you say, we need some other young and vibrant people to come on board and to be brave, to carry the message. We're not political. What we are saying is we are looking for our rights, right? We are looking for our rights. So your rights, you have to stand up for your rights. All of us have to stand.
Just one minute.
You are political.
Well, if you say so, you know, I prefer it come from you.
Not partisan political.
Okay. But once it comes from you, it's okay. It's fine with me.
You are political, but not partisan political.
Okay, great. Right.
Okay, so we have a question online. I mean, that should be Francis. I strongly believe that, I should say a statement. I strongly believe that the NS should contribute to social development. What percentage of the contribution should be used for this to avoid exploitation?
Well,
I guess
it's difficult.
Asking for an opinion.
Oh, an opinion?
Yes.
Well, that's something I would not be able to give. As I said, as was stated, the fund is to be used for a particular purpose, and I believe it's always safer to use it for that particular purpose. Now, some might say 1% of maybe your contributions. I can't speak to that. It's difficult for me to say. Everybody, you ask somebody might say 5%. Another person might say 2%. It's really difficult. For me,
if you ask me my personal opinion, I am thinking, leave that to another entity. Let the NIS monies just be for the NIS. But I understand what the brother is saying, and in his mind he might be feeling, okay, maybe just a 1% or 0.5%. And I respect that. But if you ask me personally, I think that that should come from another entity. Let the NIS monies be utilized for exactly what it was set up to be utilized for. And somebody says, especially in a time like this.
And then perhaps to what persons are looking at is like, is it a case that we as union leaders are saying, or union members are saying that the students who get monetary contribution should not really get it because it's coming from the NIS? Maybe that's the roundabout question we are trying to ask.
As we stated before, we do not have an issue with social programs. Children getting $500, the building up, we have no issue. But as we say, that funding should come from elsewhere. We have no issue. We don't hear say, okay, the social welfare program, that comes from social welfare, maybe mobilization. We don't have an issue with that. But we're just speaking about those things should come from should have a different source of funding, not the NIS.
You see, one of the things we have to bear in mind, right? We must never ever try to divorce the macro issues which have impacted on the NIS. Sometimes the government tries to shift away, but it can't shift away. Because the IMF said that in its working paper in 2013. And it mentioned a lot of the islands in the OECS. And you mentioned a few of them, the high unemployment, the increase in national debt. Okay? And when they talk about people living longer, it's 43 educators died in the last 2 years. And it's only one of them probably reached age 70, close to that. So that, what they're quoting, people living longer, that is outdated. That record already expired. We need something current. You see? So if you have high employment among the youths, you need all that money to go into the NIS. Okay? And just one point about the early retirement. I will take my NIS all year, I suppose. I'm not telling anybody. Because 6% when the NIS started is not a big sort of money. By the time you wait until, this is just my personal view, right? 65, 64, cost of living have gone high, skyrocket. You're not sure you're going to live there. Guys, people living short and out. So, for example, a simple calculation that I found out, like a graduate teacher, you get about $700 a fortnight. $1,400 a month if you take your pension at age 60. That's now. Nikki's laughing. Right? So, by the time you reach 64, you're only getting another $400 to $500. By the time that $400-500 doesn't have any value because cost of living have gone up. You understand? So for me, but for you, you have to make your own choice. Right? Okay.
If we have any questions or any statements from the floor, again, please feel free to come.
Somebody asked to ask a question.
Okay, go right ahead.
Somebody is asking, what about NS pensioners? Are we important enough to be included in these discussions? That was somebody who wanted me to ask. And I am against, of course. One of the other things I want to ask as well, though, I don't know if it came out in the discussion. Police officers in recent time who have retired are losing significant amount of earnings in terms of cash. Some persons lose up to $10,000, $15,000, stating that they were overpaid during the reclassification. I would like to know whether or not that any other persons who would have retired in a different institution if those were affected as well. Thanks.
Well, to tell you the truth, I didn't even know it was happening in the police force, because we have had a number of retirees, teachers, who have lost significant amount of monies. And it is very difficult to track exactly where the monies are being lost, because they told you it's because they're saying to some of our teachers that they were overpaid. You're paying people every month, and you're telling me you have not discovered you have overpaid them $20,000 until they retire? Yes, and I think it is very unfair. I'm glad that you raised that. We have teachers who right now are trying to recover monies. I think what would have happened when they dismissed teachers in 2021, because the unions were speaking about the whole unfairness of the issue, they went and paid some back pay that they claim were for graduate teachers. So some teachers receive a sum of money. Some of it was a significant amount, up to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, right? That was an effort, I think. I remember giving my opinion here. I think it was an effort to try and divide and rule. Now, when the persons who were paid those monies now retiring, some of them retiring or they took out, they're taking back the same money that they would have paid the people and telling them that it was an overpayment. And I think it is grossly unfair that they're doing this to our workers. I'm really surprised to hear that it's happening with the police as well. It's just a matter of getting back money. It has nothing to do with no request or nothing. And then you cannot track it, because when you go to Service Commission, they will tell you it went to audit, or it's a treasury, or it went back to... So it's like a whole rigmarole, and you can't find where the monies they're talking about went. So it's a difficult issue, but we have to keep fighting on it, because it's an injustice to our teachers, to our workers.
Go ahead, Mr. Poyle.
They're trying to get in
Okay, so let's get away to the
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. And I too want to join in congratulating you. You did a great job, all of you. And thank you very much for the sacrifices that you're making. All right? I have a question. How are you? Okay. At the end of this, right? Well, not this, but in terms of the process that you're going through, you're expected to present your findings or your conclusions to the government, right? How are you going to convince them that this is a consensus? Right? That's number one. Number two, from my understanding and subject to correction, NIS was given loans to different organizations, and some of them have been paid back in land. I don't know, it's like going back to the bartering system. All right? And we are looking towards the future. What are we going to do to address some of these issues that are still hanging?
The one as it relates to the issue where you're speaking about, the one with the lands, that, oh, no problem, that boils down to me, the investment committee and the board. And if you have a better board, a stronger board, a more independent board, and committee, then I think these sort of issues would be alleviated. But I think it stems from who and how the board is made up. So if we are able to get that changed, amended, to reflect what we believe it would enhance the level of independence, accountability, and transparency, then we believe those sort of issues and investments would be dealt with better, or I should say, there would be smarter investments made. So I think it really has to do with the board and the composition of it. So apart from that, if the board remains the same, if the composition remains the same, then we're just going to have the same problem. So it really stems from the board and the investment committee.
You have to deal with external influences.
Correct.
In regards to just let me answer the other part of the question, because you were asking how we're going to convince them that we have a consensus, right? The fact of the matter is, and this is one of the reasons why we are having this sort of thing and why we are planning to have it all over, because it is all of us, we have to let persons know that all of us would be affected by this. If you are age 59, I think what they said from 16 to 59. But once you're within that range, you would be affected by the changes that the government is proposing. The changes they are proposing, this would impact you. So all of us, as long as we have persons on board who are willing to say, we are going to stand up to the changes that are going to put us to work to age 67. We cannot afford to walk to age 67 in St. Vincent. We cannot allow the government to tell us that we must wait 2 more years before we can receive an early pension. If we pension, they're going to move it from 60 to 62. We have to tell them we stand against that. If they're saying to us that we are going to increase the penalty from 6% to 9%, we are saying we cannot afford that. And that's one of the reasons why we said we had to look at the impact this is going to have. We have to let people know it is going to affect your quality of life significantly. If you are retiring at age 60 from the public service or from whatever service you're working in, and you're not going to get an NIS pension till age 67, what are you supposed to do between age 60? People need to understand. So it is important that we get persons to understand the impact this is going to have on their lives. I can see in St. Vincent right now, the climate that we're living in, the economic difficulty and hardship that we are going on. People are going to tell me, you must survive 6 or 7 or whatever years without any source of income, when persons who are working can barely make ends meet. So persons have to understand it. I noticed some persons told me yesterday, a person told me that reform taking place all over the world. So it seems as though we must just sit back. And people are mixing up politics with livelihood. You have to be serious to look after your own issue, yourself. People don't look after themselves, they just sit down and allow persons to make these kind of decisions which we have seen being made over the past so many years. And these decisions are affecting us negatively, and they're coming to us now and saying, you must bear the... You think any one of them who making these decisions going to be without any kind of pension? They spend 9 years in office and then they're looking for a pension. So we need to look after ourselves like they're doing.
That's right. But they're working until they die as well. They're working until they die.
Just one thing also, just what the lady said. Initially, our plan was when the committee was set up was to go all over town hall meetings. But remember, we could only do that with the information. And then when we got the information was sometime late in August or mid-August. And then they're looking to make these changes by January. So most like November, December, they're waiting for something from us. So that's why we stress also the time that we get it, so that we can have more time to go about in the various areas. But now we kind of rush because we got the documentation late. And so it's, we are limited. We're still trying to do as much as we can, but because of the time that we receive the information, it makes it very difficult for us to go and do all that we want to do.
I'm going to take about 2 more persons, and I don't know if, okay, so I'll take just 2 more persons, and then we will have to wrap up the session.
My aspect that I'm talking about would be a social aspect that I think we could get the NIS as be part of a national health service, because the amount of persons that are coming along with various illness in the latter part of their life, and retiring into poverty and you don't have money to pay a medical bill is a serious issue. What I think could have tailored in within the National Insurance Service. It should have. Even if you have to ask for a 2% contribution towards that aspect, I think people would willingly forgo that for a better health service for them. And in talking about how are we going to get them to respect us and understand, I think the time has come for civil disobedience when it comes to certain aspects. Just like in 1998 with the greedy bill, as they want to say, was part of it, and the same pension issue, I think the time has come where people have to start to stand up. They can't be afraid of our shadow. In order for there to be a shadow, there's a light. If there's no light, you don't have a shadow. So, we all have to stand up and face it. And that is reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Poye. Mr. saying if we don't have any other statements, comments, I think Brother Boucher is rearing a notice him like he putting up his hand. Did you put up your hand, brother? But we're glad that you're here and we appreciate you for the efforts that you put into this. Right? So you could go ahead and
just to let those persons listening online and those persons here know that we will continue this discussion. We will announce the date of and the venue of the next town hall meeting, but remember that both unions do have media programs, and this will be a part of those respective media programs in the next coming weeks, because this is a very important issue. And with that being said, we will have teachers start this Sunday, and this will be a part of the discussion on Sunday when we have teachers start. I will now call on Sister Shelley-Ann to please come and give us the vote of thanks and just to wind the session down, so that way we can get persons going home safely and everything like that. So Sister Shelley-Ann. Our technician extraordinaire to that.
I think Brother Kijo would have said thank you already, so I could say a big thank you and get home safe. So the pleasure is mine this evening tonight to bring the curtains down on this very informative and important issue. As Brother Robbie would have mentioned, I'm disappointed with the turnout. But nevertheless, we're here, and people just have to, I don't want to say satisfied with what they get, but when it's time to stand and people don't stand, then they just have to be satisfied, and unfortunately for what we get. So we want to give thanks to the Almighty. He has allowed us to have this session. We had many deliberations, but we were able to pull it off, and we are thankful that He has brought us this far, and we have been able to present to our members. Thank you, Chairperson, Sister Fiona, for coordinating this evening's event. We want to say thank you to the Chair of the committee, Brother Andrew, and Deputy Chair for the presentations that they would have made. Very informative and comprehensive, and I'm sure that whoever came and who listened online have no regret that they actually came and joined the live. We want to say thank you to generally the persons who sat on the Pension Reform Committee. It wasn't easy, as Brother Robbie mentioned, many nights you came from work and just went into meeting, but it was worth it, and we really want to say thank you. Dr. Friday is not here, but he was here earlier on. We want to thank him. That is the President of the New Democratic Party and his General Secretary. They were here earlier on. Thank you for your support and for your presence. And the Presidents of the unions, thank you so much for your support and your guidance. Thank you, Brother Robbie and Brother Boucher. Well, Brother Daniel is not here, but I'm sure he is listening. Thank you for your support. And thank you very much, you members, all the executive members who are here, and our members of the various organizations. Thank you for your support. Thank you for believing in us. And I pray that you will continue to support your union and rally behind your union. As was mentioned before, you would know of the next meeting, where we would go either Leeward, Windward, Beckway, or Southern Grenadines. But we're coming to your area, and we're coming soon. So thank you again, everybody, for being here, and I pray that you're going to get home safe. Thank you for the prayer, Sister Gwyneth. And those persons who listened online, followed us online, thank you very much. Sometimes you forget the online, because they're not right in front of you. But thank you very much for your support. Thank you for listening. Thank you for those who shared the live. And all the best until our next program, our next town hall